Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this last panel of the day. It's last but not least, we've actually saved up the best for last in terms of the conversations that we'll be having here this afternoon. And in this panel, we're going to focus on government leadership's views on space sustainability. Now, despite the large and rapidly growing commercial space sector, governments still play a dominant role in shaping the evolution of the global space arena through their regulatory functions, through policy, through defining priorities for national space programs and the associated investments therein, and of course through the use of levers such as industrial policy, various incentives, etc. So in this panel, we want to showcase space sustainability initiatives by senior leadership at national government level and at also the intergovernmental level. We will discuss national and regional priorities for space sustainability and how they relate to national space policy and strategy goals. We'll discuss the status of implementation of efforts to meet those priorities and goals. And we'll also touch on coordination across national and regional lines to promote actions and behaviors that enhance and strengthen space sustainability efforts. So, to discuss these topics with me today, we have an excellent lineup of speakers from government, national space agencies, and also a regional space agency. And so, starting from my left, we have His Excellency Tidiane Ouattara, President of the Council of the African Space Agency. Welcome, Tidiane. Then we have Franziska Knur, who is the Deputy Head of UN Affairs for the German Space Agency, DLR. Welcome. Then we have Hugo Costa, who is Executive Board Member of the Portuguese Space Agency. Welcome, Hugo. And over on the far end of the lineup, Miriam Grigg, Deputy Director, International Resilience and Regulation at the UK Department of Science, Innovation and Industry, DSIT. So thank you very much for availing yourselves for our panel discussion this afternoon. I'm really looking forward to your interventions. So then, diving right into our questions, Tidiane, I'm going to start with you. The African Space Agency was officially established in April this year, still a very new institution, and I know that the audience is excited to find out more about it. And I know from listening to the statements of African delegations at COPUOS that many African countries attach great importance to the topic of space sustainability. So, can you tell us what the member states in the African Space Agency hope that the agency will be able to achieve in terms of space sustainability? And, well, I'll follow up with another question, but just perhaps if you could lead with that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter. And I would like to thank the organizers. And for those who don't know, Peter Martinez is one of the fathers of the African space policy and strategy. That being said, Africa is in space, we are not coming from nowhere. We developed our space policy and strategy in 2016, and since last year, we've been elected to lead the governing body, therefore to put the governance in place. We are 55 countries that are interested in using space for the socio-economic development. But at the same time, the 55 countries were not there when the 5 treaties were being put in place. Secondly, they want to use space in being there effectively. That raises a question of, is there a place for us? Because most of them, those who have been the pioneers, have been facing several other issues based on the interpretation of some treaties. And they are feeling that it is impeding them to do the space activities. Therefore, the sustainability becomes very critical for us. But the sustainability for us, we have to look at it through 2 angles. There is the level of the exploration of the space per se, having the place, having the opportunity to have our satellites circulating freely without problem, but also the sustainability in using space product and services for the socio-economic development. We do have companies that are disappearing after 1 or 2 years. We do have some institutions that have problems to undertake the space business development. We'll come back to that, but for us, the space sustainability is something that is one of our priorities. This is why in the African Space Policy and Strategy, we have only 2 goals. The coordination of space programs in the continent, making sure that all African countries work together, put effort together. But we do have the second goal, which is linked to that, which is to create a regulatory frame which will allow all African countries not only to do space business between themselves, but to voice together, having one voice at the international fora with respect to space matters. We'll come back to that.
Okay, thank you. Well, so I just want to follow up on one of the points that you made where you talked about sustainability being an integral part of the African space strategy. So this raises the question, there may be conflicts that arise between interests at national level and regional level. So how does the agency differentiate between space sustainability goals at the national level and those at the regional level? And which one does it prioritize if there's a difference or perhaps even a conflict between the two?
Yeah, I think you are fully right. This is why the African Space Agency has been put in place. When we say to coordinate the space program, you know, space is about sovereignty also. Therefore, at the national level, some countries may have some hard policies or regulations. And some other countries, between brackets, in Africa, we have 3 types of countries in the space arena. Those who have been the pioneers, South Africa, Egypt, Nigeria, Algeria to some extent. They've started putting in place some regulation framework. And you have the newcomers, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Gabon, Senegal being the last. These countries are putting in place the governance and system. And the big chunk of the African countries, they don't have space policy, they don't have space agency, but they are among the biggest users of space products and services. And what do you do with all these ecosystems? This is where your question is more than relevant. Our role as African Space Agency is to make sure that all these countries work together. This is why we say to create a regulatory framework, in fact, to harmonize a little bit as much as possible to allow the space activities to be done. That is not possible without also the regional mechanism through what we call the regional economic communities. For example, in Western Africa, you have ECOWAS. The ECOWAS is building currently the space policy for Western Africa, led by Nigeria. But you do have Ghana, you have Cote d'Ivoire, who created the space agencies, and you have Senegal. SADC in Southern Africa also is developing something on Earth observation. And there you have South Africa, but you do have Zimbabwe, you do have Zambia, you do have Namibia. You know, this continent, big enough, made up 55 countries, I would say, depending on the priorities and the scale, there is a necessity to start harmonizing. There is a necessity to start developing single vision. And this is the main goal of the African Space Agency. It is not a done deal. This is why we are learning from others. And the African Space Agency is the second regional space agency in place in the world after ESA. And there is a lot to do, but the key message here is we are here to learn, but we are also here to adapt to the African realities and interests.
Thank you. So I'd like to pivot now from the regional perspective to the more national perspective, and I'd like to address my next question to Hugo. So, Hugo, as we all know, space sustainability cannot be addressed in a vacuum. Sorry, no pun intended. It's part of the broader space sustainability conversation, which also includes sustainability on Earth, right? So I noticed that Portugal's space strategy includes a pillar called Sustainable Space for a Sustainable Earth. So can you tell us how has this strategy been translated into practice?
Certainly, Peter, and good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Peter, and all my colleagues here in the podium. So it's a pleasure to be back to your summit. We believe that it's the yearly summit where we can discuss sustainability in an open way. And so thank you very much to give us again this opportunity. Indeed, from the very beginning, when the Portuguese Space Agency was created in 2019, sustainable space for sustainable Earth was and still is our motto. We started, and let's start from the ground, with sustainability on Earth. One of the first things that we did in the agency was to connect the space with the non-space actors and to address key important issues. And one of them was the plastic in the ocean. So we decided to launch a moonshot where the contestants would have to bring together AI, Earth observation data, and address the plastics in the ocean. So the project is now coming to an end, and it's interesting to see what they have developed. And of course, they develop an algorithm for AI to detect the plastics. They create a database because one of the main issues is to have a data set with in situ data. So they developed as well this data set. To increase the number of the data available, they have created a vehicle, autonomous vehicle, to go in the oceans and detect automatically plastic. They also generated a model to understand where is the plastic coming from and the destination that these plastics is going. And so this was the first activity that we launched in the agency to address. And then 5 years later, once we award this project, we can see how it was actually possible to bring together these three components, AI, space observation data, and to address this key issue. So now when we move further and we continue the applications in the agency, we went to 3 different levels. One, in policy. We realized that it's important that the policies addresses the key issues. And in this sense, we are looking and working locally with our organizations, political organizations, to bring Earth observation data to address these needs on Earth, on the climate. So more and more you can see in the national documents that space data is being forced to be used on this matter. Then we have also creating awareness between the local entities with the municipalities, because one of the things we realize is the municipalities, they have issues that can be addressed with space data. Companies that work in space, they know what space data can do in different domains, but we need to bring these together. So we went through all the country, explaining and bringing these two worlds together. And right now, what we have now, it's the third component, which is the funding. We are providing funding to the companies and to the municipalities to address these needs that they have. We also support for example, in the agriculture, today we are kicking off a project, a partnership in agriculture, where space data will contribute to use better the resources that we have in agriculture. So this is the component on sustainability for Earth. Now, if you go into space and think about the space sustainability, here we have 2 domains. One of the technological, and of course here we are talking about a different beast, and Portugal, as a member of the European Space Agency, we contribute a lot by our subscription of the different missions on active debris removal, in-orbit servicing, extension of life, also in the STM services. So this is on the technological side, how we address and we bring our companies to work together with ESA in the ESA programs. And then on the policy and the regulatory level. We believe that countries that might not have big budgets to contribute on the technological aspect, they can, however, contribute on the policy and the regulatory. So our Portuguese space law very much addresses the space debris and space operations. Portugal actively contributes to COPUOS, and as an example, the conference that we organized last year, where we brought member states, organizations, private entities to discuss freely and openly the space sustainability, which led to the Lisbon Declaration Outer Space, and then was some components of it were in the Pact for the Future of UN. So these are the two main components on this end. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugo. So yeah, kind of picking on this, pulling a bit on this technology development thread and how that can support space sustainability, I'd like to address my next question to Franziska. So many analysts believe that reusability is going to be a key part of space sustainability and might contribute to the development of a future circular space economy, although we're probably still a very long way off from anything like that. But can you tell us what efforts does DLR have to develop the capability of reusability, and perhaps give us some examples?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Peter. And first of all, I have to start up with saying that my DG, Dr. Walter Pelzer, is really, really sorry not to be here. You know that there is going on in parallel the ESA Council here in Paris, and we take ESA very serious in Europe because it's through ESA that we chart our future in space. So apologies from him. However, it was very important for him that we participate in this panel because this overall summit is a really important contribution to how we shape space sustainability and the discourse on that. And he wanted me also to congratulate the organizers, Secure World, but also our French colleagues for this excellent edition of the event. Now, there is a bit of a reorganization going on right now, how Germany addresses space, and I want to just shortly introduce that to you. You may know that the space portfolio is given more visibility in Germany by recognition in the title of the Federal Ministry of Research, Technology and Space that we are having now. And at the same time, the relevance of space activities and also, of course, the safe and secure space environment is recognized across government, also of DOD and Ministry of Foreign Affairs, of course, and other ministries. Now, as you mentioned, yes, we conduct in Germany space activities for sustainability on Earth, very much as Portugal also does and other European countries. But that makes clear that we need, with this increased reliance on space, also to take care of the space infrastructure and the space environment. So we have various means to promote the space sustainability. And I'll just mention a few and then dive into the question that you asked. First of all, very important for our national space projects and also the ESA work we do is that we have very high quality assurance and product standards. So space debris mitigation, for example. Our engineers work on very high standards, which we promote also internationally. We invest heavily in USST. We've heard about this yesterday. So provide collision avoidance services and enhance SSA. And then, yes, of course, technology development is the key driver of space sustainability. The keywords you mentioned, reusability of rockets, but also a sustainable spacecraft design and on-orbit servicing, assembly and manufacturing. Those are definitely all keywords that we have in Germany as well and are developed in our ecosystem and in the industry. And now I need to differentiate a little bit between DLR as a research facility, and you've hinted to that in your question. DLR is Germany's largest research facility, and it looks into reusable space transport. It's a key partner in Callisto, together with CNES and with JAXA. They're demonstrating technology for usable first rocket stage, and also in another project funded by the EU called SALTO. And we as a German space agency, and this is an independent branch at DLR, which works on behalf of the government implementing the German space program, also our membership in ESA. We, through ESA, for example, fund ESA's project BEST, which also, under which German companies like ESA Aerospace, for example, work on reusable first stages, and Ariane Bremen on reusable boosters. So reusability definitely is the technology that we look into, and that is important to master. But I'm also told by our engineers that it comes with increased costs, and these need to be offset, of course, economically. And what we've been driving in Europe as well, and this is also the idea of the European Launcher Challenge, really is to give the design authority to companies. So it will be a market decision where the companies will invest and bring this into their business case, the reusability concept.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's certainly a very interesting approach to take a sort of a market approach to this and see where it leads. So now I'd like to pivot to the UK. Miriam, the UK has invested in a number of important sustainability-related initiatives, including the development of standards, investing in active debris removal and in-orbit servicing technologies, and also establishing the National Space Operations Center to improve space domain awareness. So can you tell us, how were these priorities identified, and where is the UK's focus moving forward? Is it broadly on all fronts, or are you going to focus on particular areas? What's your take on that?
Is that working? Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. And this is really important to the UK government. I also wanted to just reflect that this feels like one of the most diverse audiences I've ever seen at a space event, and that deserves a moment as well. We need diverse views and questions and thinking to make good policy. The UK government is really clear in its outcomes-focused approach, and it's interesting. Nick Shave of Astroscale just before us was talking about the importance of focusing on outcomes. We are very much doing that, and it's economic growth and security that are our top strategic priorities that guide everything we do in space. We're delivering through the development of certain priority domestic capabilities, which will include in-orbit servicing and manufacturing and space domain awareness as well. I think it's worth reflecting, and Franziska, I'm envious that your ministry has space in its name. You mentioned ESA, and I've just come from the ESA Council meeting, and just like the African Space Agency, we must cooperate. It's absolutely integral, and it's all about that cooperation. How do you become more than the sum of your parts together? Our part in it, very much for us, space sustainability is about protecting safe, secure access to space into the future. So critical to delivering any other priorities as well. We must use all the levers we have and use them creatively. So, I mean, where we are now, as you touched on, in 2024, we published the Space Industrial Plan and the Space Regulatory Review, which are both a bit of a mouthful, but set out really clear direction and the underpinning evidence on space sustainability, as well as other strategic priority areas. And since then, we've worked in partnership with our very wide and wide-ranging and deep industry to deliver on some really clear commitments that we made in those documents. So that includes on ISAM, we've upgraded our test facility, commissioned feasibility studies on satellite refueling, and published a roadmap to build UK ISAM capability. Our national ADR programme, which you've already heard about, is ongoing, with the next phase due to run over the next 5 years. And we've recently launched the second stage of an innovative regulatory sandbox, which we're really excited about. This one is on rendezvous and proximity operations, but the intention is it provides a model to test other novel missions in a safe environment. And that is really groundbreaking and different, and we're looking at how we can use it as a mechanism to test not just regulatory challenges to new technologies in space, but also elsewhere. And we continue to play a leading role in UN COPUOS, again, an incredibly important organization that brings us together. We have really driven forward the long-term sustainability guidelines, particularly around capacity building, and chaired the IADC committee on a more technical level on debris coordination. And we've supported global efforts on to build the data around ablation, and we ran a workshop earlier this week on that topic, and have really appreciated the support on that. Again, to build that data set, the quality, the robustness together. I think it's worth saying that for us, sustainability goes hand in hand with resilience, with security and resilience. And on SDA, on space domain awareness, we established the UK National Space Operations Centre last year, which combines civil and military SDA capabilities to protect critical space assets. And we've also, as you mentioned, supported the development of space sustainability and launch standards, which have huge potential. So moving forward, looking to the future, we are very much guided by those outcomes of economic growth, of security, and we want to work closely in a genuine partnership with industry and with international partners to define what space sustainability means to us, to regulate for these rapidly emerging technologies that are very, fast-paced and unpredictable, creating a really flexible, agile system that can adapt, that can respond, that can enable that innovation, and how best to mitigate the risk of debris to continued access to space. So that's our strategic approach going forwards, and I think it's worth mentioning that you'll know that the UK Space Agency is joining the department so that we have policy, strategy and delivery in one place. And we are really excited about the synergies and the streamlining that is going to bring. I think it's also worth noting that in the governance of how we coordinate all space policy across government, sustainability is a priority activity that threads through everything that we do on policy development. I'll stop there, thanks.
Thank you. So what I'd like to do now is to sort of switch our focus from the national level to the multilateral level and come back to something that Tidiane touched upon in his first statement, which was the existing regulatory framework was established in the very early days of the space age when there were few actors, right? And so we're actually going through another epoch of space rulemaking now. And when we started the space sustainability discussions in COPUOS, one of the issues that we had to deal with was a suspicion that the space, among some of the member states, that the space environment concerns were being used to, by established space actors as a kind of a pretext to raise barriers to entry for the emerging space actors. Are there concerns by the member states of the African Space Agency that space sustainability initiatives are being used as a kind of a gatekeeping mechanism? And if so, how can those concerns be addressed in discussions at the multilateral level?
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter. This is why, right away, I would say that we in Africa, we think that the 5 treaties, we need to reread them, at least, to review them, because some of the African countries look at when they receive the agreement to use some of the frequencies or some orbital commitments, months or years later, when they come to use it, they are told that, you know, some countries are using them. And it is a frustration. And in Africa, we think that the space sustainability is looking like the climate change. Africans think that they are not among the biggest polluters in the world, but it is the continent impacted. And when there are some international agreements, they are telling African countries, you don't do that, you do that, you don't do that because of that, while we are not responsible for the climate change as polluters. Now we are seeing the space sustainability, or all the treaties and rules with respect to the space exploration. We have the feeling, based also on the fact, like the example I gave you, that if we don't stand and speak one voice, and you know, we will be impeded to explore space as newcomer, because people are telling us it is crowded, it is that, it is that. While we think that space is a common resource, and we all have the responsibility to optimize the use or the exploration of space for better life on the Earth. Today, we think that some fora like UNOSA, or through UN COPUOS through UNOSA, and other international fora will be really, we'll see Africans participating more and more. But at the same time, we have a plan to educate and train our policy makers, our diplomats, our decision makers, because it is important. If you go to UN COPUOS, you can see that Africans are not participating more and more, but it is coming, because the reality 10 years ago is completely different. You will see Africa participating more and more in these discussions, because we don't want to be impeded. We don't want to be stopped for any reasons on and using treaties where we were not there. Some people were telling me, Tidiane, it is about the interpretation, be it. Tidiane, it is really impeding us, be it. But let's reread the treaties, or let's look the treaties in looking at the emerging nations, because it is not only Africa. You also have Latin America, Central America, you also have Asia. People are growing now in the space arena. They want to be space global players. Therefore, there is a necessity to continue the dialogue. There is a necessity to listen to them. Because if we don't listen to those who are feeling that they are part or they are excluded, it will be very difficult later, because they will try to find their own way, since all these treaties, for most of them, are not legally binding. If you have the technologies, you can start doing what you want. This is what is happening also anyway at a certain level. We have to avoid that, because once again, space is a common resource, and it will impact all of us, like the climate change is impacting us. We are all responsible for the better exploration of space, and let's work that emerging nations, like in Africa, don't think that they are excluded from the beginning to be part of the game. That is the key message I can say here. And this is why the African Space Agency has been established, once again, to coordinate, to create that regulatory framework, and to create the critical mass, human capital, because the space law in Africa is almost new. And empowering people, letting them to know the commitment, the responsibility they will be facing. Let's say you launch a satellite, you have to be aware of that and that and that. It increases the, I would say, the responsibility in using the space in a responsible manner. If people don't know, they will continue participating in, and they will feel that they were not really empowered to be accountable of what is going on. A crowded space is not good for the world. But the new nations also want to explore this space. This is the dilemma. Let's work together and to see how these newcomers can participate in the discussion and if also in the activities.
Thank you. So I think you're kind of touching on the issue of capacity building and the importance of that to implement all of these new soft law, non-binding instruments that have been developed to support space sustainability. And as we know, there's a growing body of best practices ranging from UN guidelines to aspirational industry best practices, standards, norms, etc. So my next question I will address to Hugo. These instruments, they, in order to have their intended long-term effects, they have to be implemented in practice by all space actors, not just a subset, and regardless of their level of space capability or technical maturation. So how can we build space capacity in the newer space actors so that they conduct their space operations in a manner that is sustainable over the long term? And I know, Hugo, this is something that you've given a lot of thought to in Portugal.
Indeed, Peter. And let me start with, you mentioned all space actors, and also take on what Tidiane just mentioned. We have more nations coming into space operations. We have more private companies coming to space operations. And the world is very different from when the main treaties were written, where we had mainly the public entities operating in space. So one of the things that is important is to find a way where we can have the public actors and also the private entities to come together and work together and talk together how this best practice will be in place. Of course, they have different objectives. When you are a public entity or a governmental entity, you have certain set of objectives while you're using space. If you're a private entity, mainly it can be profit to your operations. So, and the amount of debris and the amount of space objects that we have can really impact both sectors. So, one of the ways that we did it in Portugal is through regulation. And being a European and being in Europe, I need to be careful when I use the word space and law in the same sentence. Nowadays, is critical when you say space law. But we need to go through regulation. And our example, what it did in Portugal is through our national space law and the regulation, we address the topic of debris mitigation, and goes very well in line with the UN long-term sustainability guidelines. These guidelines are our lighthouse and how we see our national regulation. And any operator that wants to register a satellite and operate from Portugal, he's legally obliged to give a space debris mitigation plan, and he needs to demonstrate to the authorities how these operations ensure the fullest possible mitigation of space debris. So we believe that through regulation, you can, I would not say impose, but you can set up a standard on how the companies should work. And for example, one of the companies that launched last year a satellite, the satellite was a proof of concept. They wanted to test a few things, and after 1 year and something, the satellite came down to Earth. So they reached their objectives, and immediately they decommissioned the satellite. But then when you think about long term, and here we address it also on our space educational activities, we have two we have two big activities. One is the Repeatedly Rocketry Challenge, where We launched a challenge to European students to build their rockets and launch it from Portugal, and also a CubeSat contest just for the Portuguese university students, where in their design, when they are, especially on the CubeSat, during their design, during the goals of their mission, they have to come up with ideas for space sustainability, how they will they will make sure that their satellite will not contribute to increase the problems of space sustainability. And then as an ESA member state, we look to the Zero Debris Charter. When you think about zero debris, it's perhaps a goal that is difficult to achieve. But if it's only when you set up these goals that are difficult and they seem that they are not reachable, that you can overcome the technological barriers and difficulties to overcome that and actually try to meet that criteria of the zero debris. So we, throughout, of course, during our participation at ESA and the ESA programs, we try as much as possible that our industry, together right now with the university students on these projects, they can come up with solutions and ideas that are not yet known or are not yet in our brains to come up with these new ideas and set up new things for the future.
Thank you. You mentioned, and there are several mentions of the LTS guidelines. I just actually want to talk about that for a couple of minutes. So as we all know, the LTS guidelines, the Space Sustainability Guidelines, were adopted in 2019, and states have been implementing them since. And the UK has been among the states that has regularly reported to COPUOS on its implementation experiences, and it funded the establishment of a website for member states to contribute their implementation experiences. So, Miriam, can you maybe tell us a bit about how has the UK been implementing these guidelines, what challenges have been uncovered, and are there areas of space sustainability that aren't included in these guidelines that you would like to see included in future guidelines? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, firstly, we're very grateful to UNISA for their invaluable work, and in a challenging time for all UN bodies, it's really vital that we value the importance of that multilateralism for long-term sustainability in space. I think it's worth noting that industry can also contribute to UNISA. They have a new multi-partner trust fund, which is an exciting and more commercialized approach that we were discussing earlier. What have we done in the UK? The long-term sustainability guidelines, I liked how Hugo described them as a lighthouse. I think we feel similarly. And they're there to guide different ships on the sea. I think, what the approach that we've taken, again, very outcome focused. It's about we've integrated both those guidelines and the IADC's space debris mitigation guidelines into our regulatory regime. So using them to shape our licensing conditions, our orbital mission safety principles, post-mission disposal requirements. So really using them, mainstreaming them across our regulatory regime. That regulatory framework is always adapting and changing, as we spoke earlier. Regulatory reform is a top priority for the government. And we, as we identify areas where we can improve, where we can make our framework more attractive, more competitive, more agile, we will always look to integrate those guidelines into how we shape our systems, how we shape the structures. And our priorities also look, you asked about looking beyond the current guidelines. We're certainly thinking about, and I think there are live discussions globally on some of these shared future priorities like lunar sustainability and commercial norms for ISAM and debris removal. So we're very active in the second phase of the working group on the long-term sustainability guidelines. And we're leading efforts to extend that mandate to include more substantive discussions with experts to address future challenges.
Thank you. So we are getting almost to the end of our time, and I'd like to allow some time for audience questions. So if somebody could bring up the iPad with the questions, we'll get to this. But before we get to the questions, I just want to ask a question to our three European colleagues on the panel. So this week, as you know, we've had a series of ESA Council meetings, and so I would like to, understanding that much, of course, is still not public, what can you share with us about priorities for space sustainability being discussed in these council meetings? If you can share anything with us. So who would like to? Hugo.
I volunteer.
You've been volunteered.
Reply to the
Okay.
question. Well, the space safety program is one of the ESA programs that looks into space sustainability. And the discussions are ongoing. It's an ambitious program, but one of the things that we can see, and of course there's a lot of discussions, we are 1 month ahead or before the ministerial. So, and when you get close to the ministerial, of course tension sometimes comes along. But what we can see around the table is that the space safety program is a program that very much all member states contribute to and wants to get to see it in place. So I believe that the ESA ministerial is going to be very positive in this sense. And with this goal of the zero debris policy, we will continue to work towards that goal. Now, to sum up, and I believe that in Europe we are very conscious about sustainability, and we can see this across all of the economic sectors. And if sometimes we hear that Europeans, we work a lot on regulations and we have regulations for everything, I think the regulation that we have, and especially from the European Commission, also gives some peace to the European citizens, that we know that independent on the economic sector, we know that we will be well treated, and it doesn't matter which country where you are. And bringing out to space, I believe that sustainability, space sustainability in Europe is a driver, will continue to be a key driver, not just at ESA, but the member states of ESA, the European Commission, and all the member states from both organizations. Space sustainability is going to be a key driver, and I strongly believe that in Europe we will lead space sustainability through example. And we can see when we discuss with our industries how more conscious also they are regarding space sustainability. We can see the discussions that happen either in the European Commission or European Union with the member states, how space sustainability is a key point for everyone around the table. So I believe that in Europe we will lead by example in the space sustainability.
Thank you. Do either of the other panelists want to come in on this point?
Well, I'll just add one point, and I haven't been a part of the ESA Council meetings this week. However, I've been talking to my colleagues yesterday, and with ESA at 50 now and all the challenges that are going on, just they are taking very seriously, of course, the challenges that we have right now, and then turning towards them and finding the best solutions to tackle them. On sustainability, one point that is really important to our delegation there is that we really need to take serious commercial innovation and startups as accelerators of the development of sustainable technologies. And ESA is doing an excellent job with their programs in this area as well, the Access program. So we are prepared to support and continue our support to those which especially focus on new space, on the promotion of innovation, SMEs and startups, to really also have them shape how we address and tackle those issues.
Thank you. Well, that's so that question actually is a great lead into one of the questions that we've received from the audience here, which has a number of votes for it. So the question is this: many nations have announced increases in defense space budgets. How can that investment be harnessed to ensure safety and sustainability? Or is space sustainability just seen as a civil matter?
Happy to go on that.
Please.
It's a great question. Yeah, I mean, that is very much the focus. And, you know, looking at European colleagues, European security is our shared you know, political priority, absolutely critical. I think that certainly from a UK perspective, we work incredibly closely with our defence colleagues, as well as you know, policy and operational, and more we look at it as a whole, as one government. And it's space for national security, it's space for European security. I think it is very difficult to argue that deep and fundamental interconnectedness, you know, it is not there. And I think as we make policy, that's reflected. I think it's just as critical for our defence colleagues that space is accessible, is usable now and in the future, more so than ever. So it does feel like that joint approach, joint way of working across many countries is becoming the norm and the default in a way that it hasn't before. But interested in others' thoughts.
Well, this perhaps before we go to the others, it kind of links to another question that came up in this in the thread, and that touches on the dual use issue. And the question is, as a leader, what specific mechanism is your organization willing to support to overcome the national security barriers and ensure open access to proprietary data and technology required for things like active debris removals? That's all kind of part of this bigger question. Who would like to have a go at that?
I can try. I can try maybe to address both. Like, space perhaps is a different place to work. It doesn't matter if it's if you're looking defense or you look in civil space. Either we comply altogether with the same way of working, or it will not work. It's like driving a highway. If you drive, we have to drive all the same in the same way, because if you're in the highway and there's someone going the other way around, it's going to be accidents, and then you cannot drive. So in space it's a bit the same. If you don't comply with a sustainable manner to operate in space, we all know the Kessler effect, and then space is going to be closed for business, and nobody wants that. So independent where your goals are, of course, your goals might be very different, but we always have to work under the same way to use space, either for Earth or to be in space, or to use the space. Now, having now we were talking about a lot in space about dual use, but if you think about other sectors of the economy, they are also dual use. I don't know, it's vehicles, wherever you work, it can always be dual use, right? So in space, it's going to be the same. Of course, you develop, most of the times when you develop activities in defense. They overcome some difficulties, technological aspects, and then we can see this implemented in the civil use. Maybe here in space can be the other way around, since we started with the civil use, and now it can be also used for defense. But in the end, what we all want is to live in a safe world, independent where we are from. We all want to go, after the work, we all want to go to our families and live in a peaceful world. So this is just a come and go, and we have seen through history how these things happen, and the better days will come again.
Thank you. So, looking to the future, and I see that our time is out, but I want to sneak in one quick question, and perhaps if you can just give us a very short answer on this. There's a question here: how do the space agencies view the prospects for a future circular economy in space? Interested to hear our panelists' thoughts on this. Who would like to go first?
I can try to take that
Yeah.
one.
Tidiane?
I can take it. Since it was for targeting the national space agencies. This is why I was a little bit quiet.
No, it says space agencies. So
now,
it can be regional too.
now I can talk.
Now you can talk.
No, the circular economy, in Africa, we don't believe in that, and that is not our approach. What we believe in is the peaceful use of the space. That is clearly embedded in our African space policy and strategy. Whatever you do in space, do it for the purpose of socio-economic development and the peacekeeping process. Now, we cannot impede nations to use space for their own priorities. But what we want to tell all space actors, they cannot do and exploit space now without taking into account the emerging nations. Let's say in Europe, they develop the sustainability, the space sustainability mechanism policy. But when you go up, Europe doesn't exist there. We go to the same common resource. Protecting a territory is one thing. Talking about the better exploration of space is another thing. Therefore, in developing things here, you have to include others because you'll need them also to be able to better implement your strategies and policies you are doing here. Secondly, it is not because you invest a lot in science and technology that the sustainability will be a reality. The enablers of science and technology, we need to address that. This is why I said the human capital is important. Let's train people. Let's make sure that people understand their responsibility. It is the example of climate change. Whatever you use as technology or science, if people don't take the ownership, it becomes difficult. And the ownership starts with knowing our responsibility, the impact of what we are doing, and also knowing the rules around that. I will stop here because we are coming from another perspective. Let's avoid launching satellites because we want to launch satellites. Because 55 African countries, imagine each of them launch a satellite every day. It will become another nightmare. Secondly, those who have a lot of satellites in orbit, there are a few. Now, how they interact with others to make sure there is space for everybody. I'll stop here.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on this circular space economy question? Hugo?
Well, I believe that in the future, when we start also to make in orbit, build in orbit, we will reach a point that will be very close to the circular economy. We can see now how also industries are thinking about reuse of satellites, extend the life of satellites in space, and this could be one of the solutions to make use already what is up there, and to rethink the way we use satellites, for example, in the future, or having satellites with more capabilities than what they have now before. Because one of the things that we have seen throughout the space industry is that there was a point where we start to go small and we start to miniaturize a lot because of the cost of launch. Now we see actors in working in the space industry that cost of launching is decreasing a lot, so meaning that you can start to launch again big satellites. So if this will be the trend in the future, it means that you can build bigger satellites with more capability in different uses in telecommunications, Earth observation, that can combine different aspects. And then if you are able to extend the life of satellites, this could help and go towards the circular economy. But if you think, for example, in the clothing industry and circular economy, this is not perhaps one of the best examples on how this works, because now we just have more and more clothes being produced, right? So I know it's a far-hand example, but sometimes you need to look into other industries, how they use this circular economy, and try to then come up with ideas for our own sector.
Thank you. Yes, and it's something that's become quite topical, and it's a secure world where we're trying to understand whether there really is a there as far as the circular space economy is concerned. So, thank you.
Can I add quickly?
Please, yeah.
I think there's a really, really strong responsibility that as costs fall, we make sure, as Tidiane was saying, that this is about accessibility, and that this is about spreading the benefits and the opportunities of space. And I see that, if we can get to a place we're moving towards better value for money, efficiency, and all the opportunities for ride sharing, for different sort of types of pooling resources and access, I think that is a huge opportunity for all nations.
Thank you. Well, I see our time has caught up with us. We're a little bit over time, so I think I'm going to end the panel here. But thank you very much to our panelists. Please join me in giving them a round of applause.